Good afternoon, my name is Jack Taberner and I'm from England. Here we have a saying, you reap what you sow, and we are currently reaping the disasters of our past behaviour towards our environment, and it's not good. In this monologue, I'm going to talk about the environment and highlight some of the causes and the effects of the change. First of all, I'm going to talk about threats to the environment, and in particular, threats posed by new product design, and highlight some of the issues facing the designers, which not only include how it works, but also its effect on the environment both during and after its useful life. After that, I'll highlight some of the world disasters and look at some of the reasons why they occurred. Making a product uses resources, such as raw materials and energy. Both of these have an impact on the environment. There are a number of things the designer might think about to reduce this impact. First, the material used to make the product. Second, the life of the product. And finally, what happens to it when it comes to the end of its life. We'll look at these in a little more detail. Could the product use less material by making it smaller or thinner and still do the same job? Or, alternatively, could the product be made from a renewable material like timber, for example, which can be reused and finally either burnt to produce heat or buried to degrade in the ground? Most metals that can be reused, like aluminium cans. It's 20 times more efficient to recycle them than it is to make new ones. However, plastics are not biodegradable, but they can be recycled and reused. Most products have a limited life and are thrown away when they either stop working or are worn out. Designers have to consider how long the product will last and what happens to it when it's no longer needed. A product with a long life uses less material than several short-lived replacements. This is good for the environment. However, a longer life also means that the manufacturer will sell less replacements, and the consumer is forced to buy again. As we say, buy cheap, buy twice. Products could be made from a series of standard modules. This would mean that when they went wrong, only the faulty module would need either repairing or replacing. At the end of their useful life, most products are disposed of in some way. Many of the products that we use currently end up in landfill. This means they are buried in underground rubbish dumps. This is one of the least environmentally friendly methods of disposal. Recycling reduces the need for landfill and new materials while reducing damage to the environment. For example, this might mean melting plastic parts so they can be reshaped into new products. There may be limited options for the product itself to use materials that will break down in landfill dumps, and this is a especially important factor when considering packaging materials, which are usually thrown away without further use. Manufacture of new products is a threat to our environment that we can, to some extent, control in advance, if we want to, and that's the question. Most of the environmental disasters of recent times are man-made, caused by human error, accidents, lack of foresight, cutting corners, greed, and simple incompetence. In other words, without some kind of human intervention, they would never have happened. Lack of foresight is a common cause of an environmental disaster. For example, the need for more food in Australia prompted the use of a European style of agriculture and irrigation projects, but mismanagement caused the ground to salinate, rendering the land effectively useless. Also in Australia, in the late 50s, a person released 12 imported rabbits from England. Now they have between 200 and 300 million and are considered a pest. Mismanagement is another major cause of disasters, and oil production produces more than its fair share. In April 2010, BP released millions of gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. This became known as the Deepwater Horizon disaster. The resulting pollution was not just from the oil, but the chemicals used to disperse it. Whole ecosystems were destroyed, along with the livelihoods of countless people. Many of the endangered species are not expected to recover. Nuclear accidents can be very serious. In 1986, the Chernobyl disaster would probably have been regarded as the most serious, after an enormous explosion sent radioactive ash into the atmosphere, covering most of northern Europe, and 350,000 people had to be resettled. An environmental disaster is usually caused by some human action or some form of human negligence. A classic example is with climate change. Vast amounts of greenhouse gas are currently being released into the Earth's atmosphere, potentially doing untold harm to our environment by speeding up global warming. At the same time, we are completely ignoring the warning signs and shutting our minds to the consequences that lie ahead. We don't know what these consequences will be, but they're not likely to be pleasant. The world seems on course for what's likely to be the worst environmental disaster of all time. There's still time to slow the process down, but it requires swift and worldwide action. In conclusion, our climate is changing due to the environmental changes brought about by human intervention. It can be controlled, but needs considerable foresight and effort from all of us around the world. I hope I've given you some food for thought on this important issue concerning potentially the biggest disaster of all time. Thank you for listening.